You can feel the shift before anyone says a word. The energy on the field. The way teammates linger a little longer after huddles. The way coaches glance between each other after every rep. The Cleveland Browns entered day 5 of training camp thinking they were managing a crowded quarterback room. They left that field realizing they might have found their future, and they nearly missed it because on that muggy Ohio morning, Shedeur Sanders went 9 for 9, not in a padded, no-pressure walkthrough, not in an overhyped individual drill, but in full team periods. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. In red zone sequences, in high leverage, decision-making situations against the best the defense had to offer. And he didn't just survive. He dissected 2 touchdowns, 0 incompletions, total command. The other quarterbacks, they weren't awful, but they weren't this. Flacco looked old. Gabriel looked rushed. And Pickett, now absent due to injury, watched with a forced smile, undoubtedly sensing the quarterback carousel spinning without him. But Shedeur, he looked like the conductor. It wasn't just the throws, though those were spectacular. A 14-yard strike between 2 defenders on a slant to Gage Larvadain. A rollout dart to the back corner that hit the rookie receiver in stride. Even the checkdowns looked decisive. It was the totality of the performance. How Sanders looked like he belonged not just in the drill, but in the moment. The defense started treating him differently after the first few reps. Less rookie bait looks, more full disguises. They brought simulated pressures, rotated coverages post-snap, and even tried to bait him into mistakes. He saw it all, adjusted protections, looked off safeties, hit his spots. At one point during red zone 7-on-7, corner Greg Newsome walked by the sideline, shook his head and said under his breath, "He's real." Inside the facility, the buzz spread fast. What had started as murmurs, "He looks better than Gabriel," or "He might push for second string," turned into pointed conversations. Coaches replayed the tape that night, not because they had to, but because they needed to see it again. Quarterbacks coach Alex Van Pelt reportedly told Stefanski, "He's not just surviving, he's dictating." And perhaps more telling than any stat or clip, Myles Garrett stayed after practice. No media circus. No team cameras. Just Garrett, one of the NFL's most feared offensive players, pulling Shedeur aside for extra situational breakdowns. They talked about pressures, about cadence, about what defenders key on when hunting rookie QBs. Garrett doesn't do that for everyone. He doesn't need to. This was a signal. Shedeur had earned something far more valuable than buzz or headlines. He'd earned belief. And belief in NFL circles changes everything. Suddenly, the reps started to shift, not officially, but noticeably. Where once Shedeur got the leftover reps behind Gabriel and Flacco, now he was working with the 2s, then rotating in with the 1s, then back with the 3s, but just long enough to remind everyone watching that it wasn't about pecking order anymore. It was about reality. This was no longer developmental curiosity. This was contingency planning. And that fact wasn't lost on Shedeur. He didn't celebrate, didn't campaign. He simply showed up the next day and threw another near-flawless session. 8 of 10. 1 throwaway under pressure. 1 minor misread that still ended in a completion. Another touchdown to Larvadain. The connection between the 2 rookies was becoming a problem, at least for the defense. But here's the twist. Shedeur wasn't just impressing the team. He was reshaping the culture. He didn't bark orders, but teammates listened. He didn't command the locker room, but it started to orbit him. Wide receivers fought to be in his drills. Running backs made extra cuts to stay in rhythm with him. Defensive players, even the grizzled veterans, began treating his drives with playoff-level focus. There's something about a guy who's not supposed to matter, starting to matter, and it was starting to put the coaching staff in a bind. Officially, Stefanski remained tight-lipped. "We're rotating," he told media after practice. "We'll continue to evaluate." But unofficially, the play calling in practice started to reflect trust. More deep shots, more complicated reads. More hot routes. Shedeur wasn't just running the plays. He was calling out adjustments at the line, changing protections, catching the safeties cheating and burning them for it. One moment that stood out. On a 3rd and 7 rep, the defense shifted into a disguised Tampa 2 look. Sanders recognized a late rotation and checked the play, hitting his slot receiver on a delayed seam route before the linebacker could recover. The sideline reaction said it all. Players jumped. Coaches clapped. One assistant muttered, "Vet read." This was happening. And no amount of hierarchy, draft status, or politics could ignore it for much longer. So what happens now? That's the question that hung over Berea like a storm cloud. Because the Browns didn't plan for this. They didn't expect a 5th-round pick from Colorado, labeled media hype by some scouts, written off as Deion's son, and nothing more, to walk in and outshine their veterans. They certainly didn't expect him to rally the locker room, connect with the rookies, and operate like a 5-year pro before the first preseason snap. But plans in the NFL don't matter when a player forces your hand. And Shedeur Sanders? He was breaking fingers. The front office remained quiet, at least publicly. Andrew Berry didn't make statements. But insiders noted how closely he started attending quarterback sessions, how he lingered after throws, how the scouting team began pulling old tape, not of Shedeur's college games, but of other late-round QBs who took over unexpectedly. In the media, the tide was turning. National outlets, once dismissive, began inserting Sanders' name into QB depth chart conversations. On talk radio, fans called in demanding to know why the kid wasn't being taken more seriously. On Twitter, clips of his touchdowns went viral, tagged with captions like, "This ain't normal rookie stuff." But the loudest argument came in silence. No mistakes, no excuses, no turnovers. Just clean, efficient football every single day. And in a quarterback room riddled with inconsistency. Flacco throwing wobblers, Gabriel missing open looks, Pickett in rehab. That silence became deafening. Now the Browns are facing the inevitable. Do you ride with the guy who's doing everything right, even if he wasn't part of the plan? Or do you stick with the names you expected and risk leaving your best option on the bench because of politics? It's not just a personnel decision. It's philosophical, and Shedeur knows it. He's not just playing for reps anymore. He's playing for trust, for belief, for legacy, because this isn't just a training camp breakout. This is a challenge to the system that told him he was a gadget guy, a brand quarterback, a media product. It's a warning to the NFL that leadership doesn't come from draft status. It comes from presence, from command, from work. And every single time Shedeur Sanders drops back, resets his feet, and zips another perfect pass into a tight window, he's not just throwing a football, he's throwing that entire narrative in the trash. By the time day 6 of Brown's training camp rolled around, something had changed, not in the team schedule or the drills, but in the way everyone looked at Shedeur Sanders. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was expectation. The narrative had flipped almost overnight. What began as a camp curiosity, Deion's kid with a YouTube following, a chip on his shoulder, had transformed into a legitimate quarterback competition, with Shedeur right in the thick of it. And unlike before, when he was buried behind names and contracts, he was now getting real reps, scripted, deliberate, evaluative, and all eyes were on him. You'd think that kind of pressure might rattle a rookie, especially one who was still technically listed behind 2 veterans on the depth chart. But Shedeur walked onto that field like someone who already knew how the story ends. Calm, focused, dialed in. You could almost hear the internal monologue. They finally gave me the reps. I'm not giving them back. The first team drill was a hurry-up situation. 1:45 left on the clock. Ball at the 35-yard line. Down by 4. Shedeur took the field with the 2s. Though notably, Gage Larvadain was lined up outside, a clear sign the coaches wanted to see their chemistry again. First play, a laser on a skinny post for 18 yards. Second play, a quick out for 5, perfectly timed to stop the clock. Third play, a designed rollout where Shedeur faked a run and hit his tight end across the grain. Suddenly, they were at the edge of the red zone, and the sideline was getting loud. Then came the play that had everyone talking. The defense brought a corner blitz off the weak side. Shedeur saw it pre-snap, checked protection, adjusted the route for his slot receiver, and let it fly right as the cornerback came free. Touchdown, 26 yards. Perfect placement. The slot never broke stride. The entire offensive unit mobbed him in the end zone. Even the defensive backs, trying not to admit it, were nodding their heads like, okay, that was the real deal. The coaches didn't say anything in the moment. They didn't have to. The next 2 team sessions that day, Shedeur ran exclusively with the second team. No more third-string purgatory. And when Flacco and Gabriel rotated out for water, Sanders stayed in. Reps were starting to follow reality. Meanwhile, Kenny Pickett stood on the sidelines, helmet in hand, watching. He wasn't ready to come back yet, not with that hamstring, but you could tell the urgency was creeping in because Shedeur wasn't holding down the fort. He was building a new one. That night in the film room, Stefanski and Van Pelt watched that touchdown throw on loop, not just because of the mechanics, which were flawless, but because of the processing, recognizing the blitz, trusting his check, reading the leverage, and executing the throw. That's not rookie stuff. That's Sunday stuff. Word started spreading in the cafeteria, in the weight room, in casual conversations among team staffers. He's got it. Not he might have it. Not he's got potential. He's got it. And that shift, subtle as it seemed, was monumental. Because once a locker room believes you're the guy, the rest becomes politics. And politics only work if the product on the field isn't undeniable. But Shedeur, he was becoming undeniable on day 7. Shedeur got his first full set of scripted reps against the starting defense. That meant facing Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and the full force of Jim Schwartz's pressure packages. It was a trial by fire, and he lit it up. His numbers weren't gaudy. 7 of 11, 1 touchdown, no turnovers, but every rep looked like it belonged. He moved safeties with his eyes. He climbed the pocket instead of bailing out. He threw with anticipation, not just reaction. The throw of the day came on 3rd and 10. Trips left. Play action. The defense ran a delayed stunt with Garrett looping inside. Shedeur took the hit and dropped a deep dig between the linebacker and safety, right into the hands of his receiver for 19 yards. First down. Even Garrett helped him up. Didn't say anything. Just patted his helmet once before jogging back to the huddle. That moment, that was more than respect. That was a transition. From prospect to peer, the media finally took notice. Local reporters started asking Stefanski pointed questions. Is Shedeur officially in the mix? Has he earned preseason snaps with the starters? Could he start week 1 if Pickett isn't ready? Stefanski kept it safe. We're evaluating all our quarterbacks, and Shedeur's earned more opportunities. He's growing fast. But the subtext was clear. The leash on the veterans was getting shorter by the day. Inside the building, the pressure was growing, not on Shedeur, but on the front office. Andrew Berry had traded for Pickett, had signed Flacco, had drafted Gabriel. None of those guys were playing badly, but none were generating the kind of momentum Sanders was. And the fans? They were all in. Training camp attendance spiked. Shedeur jerseys, still unofficial, started popping up in the crowd. Every big throw drew cheers like it was a game. On social media, hashtag Let Shedeur Cook trended regionally. It wasn't just hype. It was a movement. And movements are hard to ignore. Still, there was one more test. One more benchmark Shedeur hadn't hit yet, the preseason game. It was a week away, and all signs pointed to Shedeur getting a series or 2 with the second team. Maybe a quarter if the coaches were generous. But internally, the staff had already discussed extending his reps. Because if he looked the same under the lights, then it was over. No more 5th-round label. No more Deion Sun narrative. Just a quarterback who came into camp, outperformed expectations, earned the locker room, and forced his way into the starting conversation. As that first preseason game approached, you could feel it building. The reporters kept showing up early, waiting for glimpses of the first-team reps. The coaching staff started testing Shedeur's leadership, letting him install plays, call formations, and organize pre-practice film review with receivers. The vets treated him differently. No more rook hazing. No more cautious distance. They asked his opinion on route depths. They deferred to him on tempo. And in the huddle, his voice was the loudest. And Shedeur, he never flinched. Not when asked to lead. Not when handed more responsibility. Not even when told, in a quiet conversation behind closed doors, that if he played well in the preseason, he'd get real consideration to start the opener. His answer? I've been ready. And that wasn't arrogance. It was truth. Because the thing about quarterbacks who come from adversity, who get doubted, benched, overlooked, criticized, and still show up every day, is that they're forged in pressure. They don't break when the moment comes. They rise. So now the Browns are staring at a decision that once seemed impossible. Stick to the plan? Ride with the veterans? Let Shedeur sit? Or do the unthinkable? Rip up the depth chart. Start the rookie. And embrace the fact that your fifth-round pick, your cam body, your developmental guy, your we'll see what he becomes QB, is already the best shot you've got. The fans know it. The locker room knows it. The defense knows it. And more importantly, so does Shedeur Sanders. And that changes everything. The lights were brighter than usual. Not because it was the preseason opener. Not because the national cameras had suddenly descended on a typically low-stakes exhibition game, but because for the first time since arriving in Cleveland, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just a storyline. He was the show. Week 1 of the preseason. Browns versus Lions. A game that, under normal circumstances, would barely generate headlines outside Ohio. But these weren't normal circumstances, because Shedeur wasn't just filling in for an injured Kenny Pickett. He was threatening to take the job entirely. From warm-ups, you could feel the shift. He wasn't doing walk thrusts with equipment guys anymore. He was throwing darts to the starters, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Gage Larvadain. Stefanski hadn't made a public declaration, but anyone watching knew what was happening. The depth chart had been quietly flipped, and Shedeur wasn't playing to survive anymore. He was playing to take over. The game plan was conservative by design. Quick throws, limited pre-snap motion, heavy on slants and outs. Keep it clean, keep it simple. But Shedeur had no intention of playing small. The very first drive proved it. First snap, play action. Sanders rolls out left, eyes downfield, and fires a strike to his tight and over the middle for 13 yards. Second snap, empty backfield, 5 wide. Blitz incoming. He spots it instantly, adjusts the protection, and hits a hot route to Gage Larvadain for another first down. 2 plays, 2 completions, 2 statements. I see it. I get it. Let's go. But the third play, is what made Twitter explode. Tripp's right. The Lions bring pressure again, disguising a safety blitz that's meant to confuse a young QB. But Shedeur never blinks. He climbs the pocket, resets his feet, and fires a rope 22 yards downfield to Amari Cooper on a deep comeback. Timing, anticipation, ball placement. It was perfect. The Browns' sideline erupted, and in the broadcast booth, the color commentator just laughed. That's a veteran throw. Folks, that's not supposed to come from a fifth-round rookie in his first preseason drive. By the end of the quarter, Shedeur was 6 for 6 with 87 yards and a touchdown, an RPO slant that he delivered so quickly it looked like a handoff. Fans in the stands were on their feet. Local beat reporters scrambled to rewrite their developmental project takes. Even the defensive starters on the sideline were hyped, trading fist bumps and nods like they already knew. Because Shedeur wasn't proving he belonged. He was proving they were late to the party. The second quarter brought new challenges. A different personnel group. Deeper throws. More exotic defensive looks. The Lions clearly wanted to rattle him, throwing double-A gap pressure, trap coverages, and late shifts at the line. And yet, Shedeur kept answering. He checked down when he had to. He took a sack instead of forcing a throw. He slid after a scramble instead of trying to be a hero. Everything about his game screamed control, not just confidence, but command. Even when a holding penalty set them back to 2 ND and 18, Shedeur didn't panic. He hit a screen, scramble for 5, and then laser the sideline out to convert on 3rd down. The drive didn't end in a touchdown, but it ended in applause, because poise doesn't always show up on the scoreboard. Sometimes it shows up in how you handle adversity. By halftime, he completed 11 of 13 passes for 134 yards and a touchdown. No turnovers, no mistakes, just pure, clean, professional quarterbacking. In the locker room, Stefanski didn't give a speech. He didn't need to. The players were buzzing. Veteran offensive linemen walked by Shedeur and clapped him on the shoulder. Defensive starters came over, grinning. That's how you handle business. Flacco didn't play a single snap. Gabriel got a couple of mop-up series in the 4th quarter, but failed to generate any momentum. And Pickett? Still inactive, still rehabbing, still watching a new star rise. The post-game presser was a circus. Reporters skipped the usual coach speak and went straight for the question on everyone's mind. Is Shedeur Sanders your Week 1 starter? Stefanski smiled. Not coy, not dismissive. Just patient. He's earned every rep he's gotten. And he's earned more. Translation: we're not naming him yet, but we know what's coming. Back at team headquarters the next day, the tone had changed. The whispers were gone. The silence had been replaced with planning. Suddenly, offensive staff meetings were centered on what Shedeur liked, what he needed, how to make the scheme fit him, not the other way around. They shifted more practice reps to shotgun looks, quick rhythm throws, and deep option routes. Running backs were drilled on outlet routes. Tight ends focused on seam adjustments. Receivers were taught how to read leverage and snap into windows. Because Shedeur's not a wait-and-see quarterback. He's a read-it-and-rip-it quarterback. And that means timing matters. Chemistry matters. He wasn't being installed. He was being built around. Even Andrew Berry, once hesitant to elevate the rookie too soon, had to admit the reality. Shedeur had the locker room, the eye test, the analytics, and now the box score. The only thing he didn't have was a formal title. And that was coming. Week 2 of preseason was next. Another chance. Another audition. But by now, it wasn't about trying to prove he could compete. It was about closing the door behind him. Sanders didn't just want to start. He wanted the keys. He wanted to take this team and make it his own. And maybe that's what makes this story different. We've seen rookies rise before. We've seen late-round pick surprise. But what makes Shedeur unique is the intentionality. He didn't stumble into this opportunity. He demanded it. He prepared for it before the chance even existed. He carried himself like the guy, even when no one else agreed. And now, they all agree. The film agrees. The fans agree. The defense agrees. The only question left is how long the Browns can delay the inevitable. Because with Shedeur Sanders, every snap, every throw, every practice rep is one step closer to forcing the Browns into a decision they weren't ready to make. A quarterback revolution they didn't plan for. A culture shift they didn't expect. And a leader they didn't see coming. But that's what happens when talent and preparation collide with opportunity. You don't just make noise. You take over.